Now we move to green. Green, however, is not just green, is it? It's two primary colors that come together to give birth to green. So when we're looking at green, we must look at the wing colors. We're still in the realm of the ego self. That self-centered, egocentric, selfish. Selfish to the point of sacrificing the world, if necessary, for its ends. And then we have blue, which is the beginning of the electric colors, which bring wisdom from above. Here we've got the materialistic, the hot colors, magnetic colors, and here we have the electric colors coming down. So we have this influence of wisdom from above and clarity of mind from below. Yellow pages. We use these terms. What is the yellow pages? You want knowledge. You want to find out something. You want to get somebody to help you with something. You go to the yellow pages. Yellow pages are all about sulphur. Sulphur has all this knowledge, acquires knowledge, accumulates knowledge, creates a yellow book with yellow pages. That is clarity of thought. That is reason. That is logic. That is reductionist science. And it all lies within the third chakra. Manipura, this area here. Wisdom coming down here meets, and we have the color green emerging. And here, of course, this is the love chakra. This is the most important color of all. Certainly, when we speak about the spiritual areas, though, once you're into that area, you're already on a course. But we are in this area of struggle. And this is a very high ideal. Now, what remedy stands at the heart of Anahata, the fourth chakra? Well, immediately we can say emerald, the very thing that Lucifer lost in falling. Green, the emerald green. Interesting, just having come from Ireland, they call it the Emerald Isle. It is so true. So true. And you go to Southern Ireland, and particularly there is this warmth and hospitality and a lovely energy. And the Guinness is so much more delicious there. And then you go up to Belfast, and there is the aftermath of what has transpired in Northern Ireland. And there's a different energy there. You can detect it if you think esoterically and feel psychically, feel clairsentiently that there's a difference. So this contrast is quite valuable to experience as a homeopath. We need to be clairsentient, very much so, and psychometric. So, emerald. But what other remedy must be central? Looking at the red here, absolutely ferrum. You can see that must be ferrum metallicum. Let me hear. Absolutely. Magcarb being all about love. Now, don't forget that green is all about TB. We've gone from Sora, earth, to psychosis, water, Neisseria gonorrhea. We've gone up to Treponema pallidum, yellow, syphilis, the ego power, the inflated ego. What is syphilis all about? It's on the one aspect paranoia, me and them are out to get me. Mercury says, I am surrounded by enemies. That is the feeling that he has. I'm surrounded by enemies. Then we go up one. At that point, we are at fire. And now we move up to air. Air. Ether is the fifth chakra, which is all to do with communication and creativity, and is to do with the Cancer miasm, where we need a voice. We need to be able to express ourselves. And in Cancer, of course, it's a closing down of everything, control over everything. Emotions implode. And imploded emotions are up to no good. They corrupt. And then they have to be expressed in some less destructive manner. This main destructive manner would be upon the soul intellect level, that interface between reason and spirituality. Let us rather have a Cancer. And therefore, the healing power of illness brings out to try and offset and compensate for repressed emotions, a encapsulated Cancer, and then eventually a spreading Cancer. So we can understand Cancer in that light. that it is also a step towards healing. We're eternal beings. The manner of our death is immaterial in fact. It's the process of living and how we deal with what we are facing that really matters. That's so important to know. Tuberculosis, therefore we must know that carb is central to the tubercular miasm. Now, carb's pulmonary and upper respiratory tract symptoms are minimal. Here we're dealing at a deeper level. We're dealing particularly with the psychological and the emotional, deep emotional, and the spiritual struggles that occur in the TB miasm, which carb gives to us. The broken-hearted lover aspect is what we're looking for in the other remedies. The one who is losing heart and who has given heart, hoping to find heart, and finds grief instead. Unrequited and disappointed love. That's a very central rubric to the tubercular miasm. Now, I've said this before, but I just want to repeat it so we can think of it. European history has repeated this sequence as it has been repeated before and before and before, since the beginnings of time. You get a phase of Sora. And if we think of the fall of Constantinople, the fall of Rome, we enter into the Dark Ages, where reason is blotted out, where so much knowledge was lost, and living is at a very basic level. And this is Sora. Then we come into the earlier period of our modern life, and we have the Great Plague coming, we have the destruction of society at that time, and we have the corruption that arose in its place, the hedonism which arose in its place, and psychosis came into play. The next stage we know must be the Great Fire of London, heralding the syphilitic outbreak in 1550, more or less, when it really became rampant, like a forest fire going through Europe. What is it doing? It's lighting up the grey, dismal, soric state. It is destroying psychotic aspects, and it is producing ground just like a forest fire, just like the fires we find which then create the beautiful green felt that will follow. And that green felt was then, after the syphilitic outbreak, when that had died down, when a truce had been established between the resistance of humanity in general and the organism, the Treponema pallidum, there was then a truce and a balance. Then we move from rank syphilis into tuberculosis, which is pseudo-Sora. The circumstances for TB are precisely the same that exist in soric states. What is the soric state? Overcrowding, poverty, privation, malnutrition, lack of sunlight, lack of fresh air, urbanization. Also, deprivation, oppression, victimization, the haves and the have-nots. Now that's Sora. Psychosis to escape that, hedonism, gonorrhea. Then the Great Fire of London, all as they should occur, and then syphilis after the siege of Naples, spreading through Europe, and then, of course, over to the New World as well. Didn't come from the New World to us. Everybody says, it's the Italian disease, it's the French disease. It's definitely Columbus and those guys who went over there, picked it up from those horrible aborigines and those primitive peoples over there, and has brought this vicious and malicious germ over. Disowning responsibility, always. So syphilis was here and had been here for a long, long time before it became rampant and broke out. Then we have the regeneration from that is the Age of Enlightenment that followed. And then from the Age of Enlightenment, we come to the High Romantic era, when there was a burgeoning of creativity, which is so characteristic of the tubercular miasm at its greatest. It's art, it is poetry, it is music, it is sculpture. Begins with Bernini, Michelangelo Bernini, It begins with Leonardo da Vinci, and then you can see it building up until we have Rembrandt, and we have the chiaroscuro, the use of light and the use of shadow to bring out emotion at a very deep level. This was characteristic of the rejection of classicism and the movement towards high romantic expression, where passion was greater than reason. That was the feeling that the Romantics had. That inspiration, that intuition, that imagination and that fancy were far richer and far more wonderful than logic. That logic was cold. In fact, you'll find that Romanticism is a rebellion usually against classicism. And it happened in Greece thousands of years ago, happened again in modern Europe. And you can be certain that running parallel with this are the diseases. This we need to know because this is the bedrock of our understanding of the miasms, upon which we can then build the individual who's got the tubercular miasm and understand the potentials within him and what things are going to be important to him. If we know this basic structure, it helps infinitely in understanding the individual picture. Look at the general picture first. At the time that art was burgeoning in this manner, it became apparent to those observing these geniuses and the work that they were producing that these people were highly unstable, that they had the depths of depression, or they had manic phases, and during the manic phases they would be so immensely creative. Many of the poets, many of the great poets and the creators of that time would seek hunger, a state of hunger, to brighten up the mind. Simply in lecturing, I find that if I have a heavy lunch, the afternoon session is difficult. So if you want to keep the mind, I want to be cerebral. I want to be really cerebral. I'm using my keyboard of my mind, and I'm using it at speed, I think you will agree, and I need the words to be immediately available for me. The imagery must pop into my mind effortlessly, and I must be able to weave the story. Yes, my notes are here if I need them. I'm very well backed up here. How often do I consult it? So infrequently. I will later, because there's things about the TB miasm I want to really deeply root, and we must do it structurally. But it's lovely also to surf the waves of the energy that you give me. This is tubercular. It is also not masculine. The masculine takes the energy and motivates and gives me an assertiveness and a firmness and a positivity, that strength. But the romance is feminine. It's the creative aspect which is feminine. So they noticed that these people were certainly unstable, and that to have genius you had to have instability, and in fact you had to have a touch of insanity. Aristotle recognized this. He said that all greatly endowed people of exceptional knowledge are depressive and melancholic. And Plato and Socrates remarked likewise, but they emphasized the manic aspect. Plato said that with the sane poet, he was absolutely beaten hollow by the insane poet in the quality of the work that was produced. And Socrates said that for a poet to be inspired, he had to be mad. Now, there was an Italian philosopher who took those two. He took the melancholic from Aristotle, and he took the manic from Plato and Socrates and said, hey, in actual fact, it's not just melancholia, it's mania and melancholia. And we know that this is, in its more healthy form, cyclothymia, hypomania and melancholia. At its most florid, flamboyant form, it is bipolar psychosis, even manic depressive psychosis. Now we've got an interesting factor, because we can see that there is in psychosis the Neisseria gonorrhea, which is a diplococcus and which gives us duality. In this area here, it's a very patriarchal area. It's very patriarchal, hunter-gatherer, very basic and very fundamental. And the masculine is dominant. With a sauric child, Papa is the role model. But when we come up here, the mother reestablishes her importance. And the psychotic child, the muriatics, those to do with water, muriatics. Isn't it the mother factor? And the lax, of course, also. All the lax. It is the bonding with mother. It is the mother love that is very vitally important. When we come to the syphilitic, it is both mother and father who are important. And very often you will find, and as we've mentioned before, out-and-out characters I can think of, Mary Bell, for instance. Have I spoken of Mary Bell before? Yes. The young girl who murdered 2 young boys. She was no older than 11 herself. Her father was an alcoholic, and in fact, he was not a factor in her life whatsoever. Her mother was a prostitute who made use of Mary Bell in certain of her activities. A more horrible situation you can't imagine. And then from that, the need to destroy the masculine principle, which she did symbolically in killing these 2 young men. The courts did not ask why. They did not seek to understand how such a horrific thing could have happened. They put her in a high-security prison where she was abused by warders. Isn't it to be expected? You see how things unfold if you don't have understanding of how that was possible. So where there is no parent, we've got the worst syphilitic problems that come out. The mother here, again, is vitally important in the tubercular. It's a very yin sign. Yang, yin, yang, yin. Yang again. So it is that alternation. Now that is only a dominant theme. Both are present. As you know, in myself, here I am a man, seemingly, but the masculine and the feminine principles are what is all about, is what my life is all about, and the healing process that we bring about in dealing with any case is the marriage of opposites. It's the bringing together of the sublime opposites, which are the masculine and feminine principle in perfect homeostatic balance. That we're looking for. What is happening with the sepia? What is happening with the natrum mur? What is happening with an ignatia? What is happening with the causticum? In the face of disillusionment, in the face of vested interest, which will not do what causticum would wish, what does causticum do? Brings in, invokes the masculine principle and masculinizes herself. And what do we see in sepia then? We even see physiologically and anatomically changes taking place in that sepia. Thin lips, atrophic breasts, narrow hips, the loss of the bloom of youth, the loss of her femininity. Kent speaks of it. Causticum, natrum mur, oak, the wolf. All of those remedies invoke the masculine to deal with the horrors of life. And what happens then is, in invoking the masculine, the feminist becomes an abuser. They actually become an abuser in their own way, fighting for peace, eventually killing for peace. And we're back where we started. See those energies developing. And those are the ones we've got to unravel when you're treating a person. You don't want the masculine, you don't want too much feminine. Pulsatilla, Staphysagria, Semiciffusia, the Ranunculaceae, Bellus perennis. Don't those all sound like victim personalities to you? Aren't they the ones we use? And Lac caninum. Lac caninum's no wolf. It's got the same DNA almost as the wolf. Almost. 99.9 or 8, something like that. And yet what a difference between a Chihuahua and an Alaskan white wolf. By the way, as far as fire is concerned and the wolf, I don't know if you read, but 3 months ago in Yellowstone National Park, there is the alpha pair, the alpha mating pair of the most important pack in the Yellowstone National Park. They've been reintroduced with immense effects upon the entire ecosystem. The biodiversity has flourished, the most wonderful changes. And here, this wonderful white she-wolf, and she is the alpha she-wolf. So, 3 months ago, somebody shoots her. This is characteristic, the fern inferno, the fire, everything that's going on around us, just another expression of this horror, which is rampant. And this is not looking at it apocalyptically, it is looking at it realistically. Before the First World War, we could have looked at it in a similar manner. Certainly before the Second World War, it was up our nostrils. And it's been so ever since then, Vietnam, North Korea, and so it goes on. The beast principle, the masculine, is nothing to do with the feminine principle. But we need the balance between the two. Where was I? Green. The development of the bipolar state. The Neisseria is a duality of a different sort to the bipolar state. Here we see the swing between rational and irrational, and between cheerfulness and melancholia, which is characteristic of the tubercular miasm. So we need to see that the bipolar state is a basic characteristic of TB and the tubercular miasmatic manifestation. It doesn't forget about psychosis. We're dealing really with cyclothymia, whereas there is this swing, which we notice in all of us. You know, how did you get up in the morning? And very often with the tubercular, as with lycopodium, as with nux vomica, as with sepia, as with all the remedies which are liver-related particularly, they wake up wrong side of the bed, bump their heads, and the whole theme for the day is set without reason. Without any other reason that I just woke up feeling mean, or I felt depressed and down and ugly. When you hear that, think cyclothymia, because it's not a reactive depression. It's not due to anything that has transpired. It's nothing that's threatening the person. It's nothing that they're worried about. It just spontaneously announces itself. I am in a bad mood. And people can be like that constantly. Lycopodium is Lycopodium tubercular. Just look at the build. Look at the build. What do we see below? Thick ankles, legs that can start a bowing, hips, too much. Look at these saddles that I've got, doctor. How can I get rid of these buttocks? You know, and look, I'm carrying all my weight here. Then this slim waist, poorly developed breasts, and narrow shoulders, tubercular above and psychotic below. Is nature mere like that? Exactly. So we don't just say and learn it parrot fashion that these constitutions have that particular kind of profile. Realize that what you're looking at is the mix of miasm, that they are here manifesting tuberculosis, and from the waist downwards they're manifesting psychosis. That bipolar cyclothymic tendency.